We've got another one of these here. Dollar Bin Movies. Blind Ghost, once again starring Whodunnit. And it seems that this is made by the same people that were in Dollface. The exact same actors. These two were in the other movie. And of course there's her. And the whole budget look of the film, it just screams that this was the same people. Once again, SP Releasing, like all these other Dollar Bin films, SP Releasing is one of the independent film releasing groups, after all. So it makes sense they are connected to Elko Bridge and all that other stuff. What can I say about this film? Is it like Dollface in that it's very, very, very low budget? I think it might have had a little bit more budget, but there were some shoddy film work. Do you know how in a lot of films they have air view shots, like sweeping shots of a landscape of a household and things of that nature? This film does that a lot for a specific property, a large manor that the main character inherits due to the death of one of the other characters. This is like a reverse Whodunnit. The film kind of feels like I'm going out of order here. It doesn't matter. This film does kind of go out of order sometimes as well in regards to what makes sense and what doesn't. Our main character is Whodunnit, and she speaks this time. Well, she spoke in the other one, but at least this time I actually can tell you for certain that the voice that you heard in Dollface is the same voice that comes out of her lips, because she speaks in this, actually speaking, not having a narrator or self-narrate or whatever. I don't know why he's got a facial tattoo like that. He had something similar to that in the previous film. It might actually be permanent, so he's gotta like wear face masks and face paint and all that other stuff in his roles. So I don't know. She's wielding a gun in one hand and a book in the other, which is symbolic. Yes, the whole cover does feel like it works. Everything on here is in the film, pretty much. She is blind. The main character is blind. She does hold a gun at some point. The Braille book has importance. Each one of these characters are all involved in the whodunit, or who's going to do it. The reverse whodunit, so to speak. It's a very interesting story in that there's a lot to talk about, but there's also not a lot to talk about at the same time, because at least the way I'm thinking about it, I could come at this film from a lot of angles, but I just don't know where to start. So I'm probably going to try to start at the beginning. So she's in some sort of car crash, and the doctor is unwrapping her face bandages to reveal post-op surgery, whatever results. And they're wondering if she's going to have scarring or whatever. And we are introduced to the rest of the main cast, the bulk of which are on this cover so far. We have him. He plays an uncle character who is pretty close to this character. She plays the sister of this character, pretty close to this character as well. And then there are two others that you can't see on the cover here. One of which is an aunt. I believe it's his sister, perhaps. I doubt it's his wife. But one of the characters is an aunt, and this aunt is pretty much a stereotypical evil aunt, Disney villain, Cruella de Vil type of character. She's going like, oh, she's going to be like, you should have just let me pull the plug when she was under blah blah blah. She just sounds really vile and mean, and I don't know why anybody keeps her around. She's just a bad day waiting to happen, that woman. And the other girl is somebody in a wheelchair who I believe is also her aunt, though they could be the same age, though, you know, that does tend to happen sometimes. Yeah, especially when there's a wide gap in siblings. So I'm gonna let that one slide. So we learn that her great-grandfather viewed her as the favorite family member. And he's pretty much filthy rich, 500 million filthy rich. And he was passing. Excuse me for a moment. As you can see, one of my little lights fell down. I had to pick it back up. The way my lights are situated here, I have no stand to actually put this light lamp anywhere that will provide a good lighting here without also blinding me. Let me see if I can show you what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. There's a light on this side, but there's also a light on the other side. So I can't just have this light facing one direction, preferably towards me to give it a good lighting, because it would also be in my face. Okay, so that's why I have to hold it sideways. But there's no place to put it outside of hanging precariously on an edge. And on this edge, it doesn't really have the strongest of balance. So, never mind that little detour break, whatever. Not that we're talking about anything extremely important. Let's see, where else are we going with this? We've introduced the main characters, and they take off the bandages, and they show that she is blind, but otherwise fine. She can't see. So that's the major selling point to this. And they tried to market this as a horror film, but once again, like Dollface, it doesn't feel like a horror film at all. It doesn't feel scary at all. I don't know if that's due to the writing or the characters' actings or anything like that. Also, in terms of the characters, everybody else except for Alex Villaret emotes properly. I'm not trying to bash on Alex Villaret in any way, shape, or form. It's just the way she sounds and the way she reacts to people and her lines, they feel stunted. They feel stunted in some ways. Everybody else emotes with their facial features. They emote with their vocal inflections and all that other stuff a lot more than Alex Villaret does, which is kind of off-putting, but not entirely. She doesn't really react too much to being blind. She just takes a lot of this in stride. I guess you could say that's a good thing, because if she didn't take a lot of this in stride, she might be panicking quite a bit more than she is now. So the next 5 to 10 minutes are her acclimating to being blind, learning to read Braille, learning to walk with a walking stick, and all this other stuff. She lives in this rather large home all by herself, and everybody's worried that somebody's going to try to go in and do something with that. One of the cops here suspects that somebody is going to try to kill her to get the inheritance, because if she dies, the inheritance, the $500 million, gets split up between the remaining family members instead of all just going to her. So needless to say, this ends up making everybody, including the lawyer, a suspect, because they all are part of the family members, and they want some of that money. They want some of that money. They want a piece of that pie. Of course, $500 million is too tasty of a pie. And of course, nobody wants to share, so you begin to think, oh, is everybody here trying to kill her? Is everybody here coming up with certain various schemes in trying to kill her, and they're all trying to be fake being kind to her in the meantime until they can get their action off the ground? Well, then the reverse whodunit comes in, because, you know, everybody wants to kill her. The whodunit doesn't happen yet, but we have to find out who's gonna act first. Well, the funny thing is that the killers, the would-be killers, are the ones who are going to be killed off. The Whodunnit is a reverse Whodunnit. One by one, everybody starts to die. At least that's how you think it would end up. Only one person actually dies in regards to an order. One person dies and then everybody else dies at the same time. But in between that one person dying and everybody else dying, there's a fair bit of story there. We begin to learn that she's got a ghost that talks to her in the middle of the night. And she becomes kind of like a predictive type of person in regards to reading her braille books, because the ghost is changing what the braille is saying so that she can like predict other people's actions and things of that nature. It's kind of like an oracle type of power that this ghost is giving to her, becoming sort of like a sixth sense or third eye, if you will. Which kind of makes her character a little bit interesting, because she begins to figure a lot of things out about everybody else. She begins to realize that everybody's a suspect, including the detective that she hires, the private detective that she hires to keep an eye on her home and make sure nothing happens to her. Well, then the wheelchair-bound aunt dies, which I guess is obvious. She didn't really have any character growth, unlike all the others, which we've spent at least a few moments learning about them and realizing that they all have plans to kill her. The wheelchair-bound one seemed to be the only one who had no plans to do such a thing, because, as we later learn, she was already loaded, because when she dies, in her will, she leaves her inheritance, a property, a massive, massive, massive little villa out in the suburbs, to Alex Villaret's character. So they all go out there, and this is where I start talking about that little sweeping shot of the villa. There's some kind of amateurish film work there. It's a common mistake, but there's an amateurish film work in regards to sunlight. The angle of the sun and the light, when you're doing your little sweep of the villa, you have to make sure that the angle of the camera, the angle of the light of the sun, does not show the shadow of your little zooming helicopter thingamajiggy that's taking a sweeping shot of the area. You gotta make sure that the shadow of that drone is not seen on camera. Well, for the bulk of the entire sweeping shot of the villa, you can see that it's being done by a drone camera. And it's not part of the film. Someone's not just sending the drone up as part of the film in universe. No, that is an actual film technique that they were using to get that sweeping shot, which is a common way to get that sweeping shot. But again, you gotta worry about the lighting and the angle of the camera to make sure that the shadow of your drone is not seen on film. You don't want that. It breaks the immersion of people realizing that this is a film, they're filming this, and it's not actually part of the movie. You know? So, no, it's just an amateur mistake. But it's a pretty obvious one, because, you know, that drone is really visible. It is really visible. They linger on it. You can actually blatantly see that shadow very clearly. Almost distracting, even. So now that they're out of the villa, everybody's planning to put their plan to murder Alex Villaret into motion. But then, as everybody goes to bed after some party, everybody shows up to this thing, okay? The lawyer suggests everybody goes to the villa to spend a night away just to take a break, because the murderer just killed the wheelchair aunt, and they might strike again with one of the other family members. So the family members, I understand, going to this villa for the night, but then the lawyer shows up. And the lawyer says the fine print in signing off on this villa is that I get to come here whenever I want. And he goes like, you should have read the fine print, but, you know, she's blind. So, and nobody else reads the fine print to her. So, this guy is a really sneaky little weasel. So he got in on that. And then the cops show up saying, oh, we're here to serve and protect. We think they might come after you guys here, so I'm going to spend the night here as well. But then he just gets loaded drunk as well. And then the private eye detective guy shows up as, again, it's like a little comedic little scene there. The private eye detective comes up to keep a watch over her, as is his job. And then everybody drinks and parties, and at the night, everybody's going to bed. And suddenly, we linger on the scene of him dying. Everybody else dies off screen. She dies, he dies, he dies, he dies. The aunt dies. The Cruella de Vil aunt dies, and they all die off screen. And then Alex Villaret's awoken by her ghost, and the ghost starts talking to her about some stuff. She gets a little bit scared from the ghost, and then the private eye detective comes and sneaks up on her from behind. He's got a gun. So now the private eye detective shows her to all the bodies. He's the one who killed them all. He killed them all. So, the reverse whodunit, man. It's not who's gonna kill Alex Villaret first. It's who's gonna kill everybody else so that they don't get involved in killing Alex Villaret first. Because they are all looking at each other, trying to kill each other before they kill her, because she being blind, she's an easy target. It's getting rid of everybody else first, so that they can get the 500 million. And that was pretty interesting. A pretty interesting plot point to have. And then you learn that she was faking it the entire time. She can, apparently, I may have to rewatch that ending scene, but from what I took from it, was that she was faking being blind. She could see the entire time. She was just faking it. She intentionally put herself in front of the car to get injured, probably to set this whole scenario up, to get rid of them. Because she anticipated that this was going to happen, that they would try to do that, so she wanted to get rid of them first. And if that's true, then that's a really smart work twist in the story. But if that's not true, then the other story that he's trying to build, she's trying to say, is that her ghost is actually his ghost, and that his ghost was trying to do this to milk it so that he gets the 500 million the entire time. So I have no idea what's going on there. But at the end of the film, the detective survives, and he's in a diner talking with another woman that is his woman. And he's saying that he just won the lottery, 75 million. We have no idea what happens to her, though. We have no idea what happens to her 500 million. But he calls her a serial killer, and calls her psychologically challenged just like him. So I have no idea what's going on with that. So those are my two theories, is that either they both have different ghosts, and one ghost helped her get rid of all these, or they both have the same ghost, or his ghost was trying to get him to get all this stuff. It was a little bit muddy at the end. It was a little bit muddy at the end, but it was a good twist all the same, with the reverse whodunit trip. So, we have no idea what happens to her. We just know what happens to him. He's at a diner, having just made $75 million in a lottery, winning the lotto ticket numbers, because his ghost told him what the lotto ticket numbers were. So, that's it. It just cuts the credits at the end. It was very abrupt. I kind of wished they showed us what happened to her at the end, but it is what it is. Overall, I would say that this is an inferior film to Dollface, but it was more entertaining than Dollface at the same time. And that can happen. A film can be more entertaining. Because in Dollface, all we did was see a bunch of shots of the dolls and her talking to herself. That's the bulk of that movie. At least in this one, we have characters interacting with each other. They're making plans. They have motives. Everybody's trying to one-up the other, trying to get the 500 million from Alex Villaret's character. And I liked that intrigue. I liked that bitterness between everybody. And then their two faces, the kind face they're showing to her, and then the real face they're showing when she's not around, or when they think she's not able to hear them. So I liked that. But at the same time, the other one, I feel, is a little bit better written in terms of conciseness and less confusing details. But I had a lot more fun with this film, so overall, I'm going to say that the dollar did not beat me on this. This is worth at least $1 to watch. Be imaginative, everybody.